Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Thanks for watching Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage Vault Series. The Vault Series is a series of interviews that we shot starting back in 2004, 2 years before the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum opened to the public. If you like what you see, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Thanks for watching. Today's guest, half of the Memphis Horns, trumpet player Wayne Jackson.
Hello, I'm Wayne Jackson. I'm a trumpet player and have been a trumpet player now for about 40 years. My mother bought me a guitar, and I'm from West Memphis, Arkansas, by the way. I went across the Big River to Memphis in 1960 and teamed up with a group of guys, including Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn and Packy Axton, Don Nix, Terry Johnson, and we made a record called Last Night on the Satellite record label in Memphis, Tennessee, and we sold 1 million copies. It was number 2 on Billboard, number 1 in Cashbox. And that was my opening to the music business. I think I was 18. And so I stayed in the music business. I didn't know what I was going to do, and neither did my father. But it turned out that the trumpet that my mother gave me when I was 11 years old was the key to the rest of my life. And I've had a great time. I worked at Stax until 1969 on all the Otis, Redding, Sam and Dave, Carla Thomas, Rufus Thomas, Eddie Floyd, Albert King, Isaac Hayes, the Mad Lads, many others during those years. And in 1969, my partner from Stax Records, who was the marquee horns with me during the 60s, Andrew Love, he and I formed the Memphis Horns, and we continued down the path of music and continued making hit records with people. Stephen Stills, Rod Stewart, the Doobie Brothers, and then I left Memphis and came to Nashville, and it was 1978, and I joined Marty Robbins, and I played with him for the next 3.5 years and was on the Grand Ole Opry. The only trumpet player to be on the Grand Ole Opry is me. And I can't tell you how wonderful that was. I went from being in the Doobie Brothers, a high-powered rock and roll band, to wearing a tuxedo and playing piano and trumpet on the stage at the Grand Ole Opry and traveling in a Billy bus. What a trip. But Marty Robbins was a fantastic star, and I had a great time with him. And that has continued until at the present day. My latest gold album out of 83 that I have contributed to is Neil Young's Prairie Wind, which we did last year in 2005 and received the gold record in 2006 and is a Grammy nominee. Andrew and I performed on 14 records that were awarded the Grammys, I'm proud to say.
Stax, was it already established?
No, it was not Stax. Stax started out as a little record shop called Satellite Record Shop, and it was owned and operated by Estelle Axton. And Jim Stewart is her brother, and he wanted to make records. And so they bought some equipment, rented the old Capitol Theater and turned it into the Stax recording place. And then we actually were on Satellite with Last Night. And then there was another Satellite Records in California, and there was a little bit of a hubbub about that, so they just changed the name to Stax. ST from Stewart, AX from Axton, and it became Stax Records. But no, my first record was on the Satellite label.
That's neat that the Stax logo looks like a stack of records.
Stack of records, yeah.
And that's what I thought all these years it was.
Stack, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, that they incorporated that thought into the logo. But actually, Stax is just a combination of two names that happen to have a fortunate what do you call it, the inclination to see a stack of records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did Soul Man and Hold On I'm Coming and Knock on Wood and all those records, how did they come up with knowing that they wanted horns on them, and then tell people how you came up with those parts and how long it took and so forth?
In the early days of Stax, the first record that we had that was a big hit record was Last Night, and it had the little horn section, and Floyd Newman played in that, and I did, and but Andrew wasn't in that record. But it was a rhythm and blues label. That's what they were going to cut, and they had to have horns, so we were there every day. The horns were there every day, and eventually, at first, Steve would call up and say, "Come on over today. We're going to do William Bell," and I'd go over and we'd make a record over William Bell that day, or maybe all week. And then as more artists began to come, it was just a steady flow of Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, Albert King, and William Bell, and Carl Thomas, and Rufus Thomas. And it was a long list of people that we had to make 2 albums a year on. So our time was, Duck and I had a band in the nightclub, so we had to be at work at 9 o'clock. So 8 o'clock, 8:30, come on, can we leave now? You know, one more take. And the songs were written by Steve Cropper, and Isaac Hayes and David Porter were a team. And a lot of times I would go down to the hotel where Steve was working with Wilson Pickett or Eddie Floyd or whoever it might be, or Otis. Actually, the name of the hotel was, one of them was a Trumpet, one of them was a Lorraine Hotel. And we'd stay up till dawn. And Steve would be writing a song with like Wilson or Eddie Floyd. And they would sing horn parts, and I would play horn parts through the night until by the next day we went in the studio. We'd have pretty much a horn arrangement, and they'd have the song. We'd have a song ready to record, or maybe I wrote a song with Steve and Eddie called "Things Get Better" that we cut the next day, and it was out in a month and #1 in Europe, just like that. That's the way it used to work in a small town, a small music scene like Memphis. You know. You could write a song at night and have it cut the next day, which is unheard of, but it wasn't then. It was another era. Sometimes Isaac Hayes would know what the horn part was. The person who wrote the song in those days thought about horns. They don't now think about steel, or they think about strings or voices or whatever they're thinking of as background music, but in those days it was definitely horns all the time.
But the part, the da 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 da, that on
Otis.
Soul Man.
Oh, well, Soul Man, I believe that was Isaac Hayes, or it might have been Steve, or it might have been us, but I really think it was one of those people involved in writing the song that knew what the horn line was, and we performed it. And we added 2 things. If they knew the main line, we'd add a turn around, or a chorus line, or a stop somewhere with a rhythm. So we contributed and added to, and so we were all excited about it. And in the early days at Stax, we had a 1-track machine, and we all had to play at the same time, and the engineer had to have his stuff together so that we didn't have to do it over and over while he adjusted. He'd say, "Wayne's take a baby step forward," and Floyd take a baby step back, or vice versa. And the background vocals had to be done at the same time. Whatever was happening was recorded all at once.
So, like today's studio, and this is for the benefit of well, I think you explained it pretty well. That was just for those who haven't been in the studio. Today, you can pull one up, back one off, whatever, but you actually had to be spaced with the way the engineer told you to be.
We had one microphone for the horns, and it was a U-87 Neumann, and we just stood around it, and we didn't have headphones either. We had to listen to, what the engineer was doing and say, well, you know what, we need a little more trumpet. Why don't I move in 6 inches or something? Or we got too much tenor, have him back off 6 inches. And that's the way it worked. And that was the way it was for a long time. We actually got 4 tracks around 1963, I think, and then 8 tracks in 65, and it kept going up 16, 24. But in the beginning, we had to really be sharp and memorize the song and be able to play it over and over without missing a note. Because you didn't want Otis Redding down in your case, because you're the one that stopped it and made him go back and start again.
Did you take formal lessons?
My mother bought me this horn, and I just went at it like a duck to water. It was just a wonderful thing for me, the trumpet. And I loved it, Louis Armstrong and Harry James and the trumpet players of the day. My mother was a big band fanatic, and she played those records on the record player. And I'd sit down by the record player, and I took it. Starting in the 5th grade, I started taking trumpet lessons from Phil Vance, who was a band director in West Memphis. and he taught me the rudiments of the horn and taught me how to breathe. And so, and I just had a natural knack for it. And then across the street from me lived Dodd Sr. He was a lawyer that had worked his way through Tulane with the trumpet, playing Dixieland jazz. And he had me come over to his house and showed me how to play the Muskrat Ramble and When the Saints Go Marching In without music or anything. And just showed me that playing music was really fun, and you didn't have to have music. You didn't have to have a stand and music in front of you that you could play from your heart and your mind and just get a song with a melody and play the melody and then improvise around that melody. And I loved it. So, and I have to thank Dodd for my love of the trumpet.
But you can write music, right?
I can, yeah.
Was that something that you did at the time, or did you just play by memory?
We never had charts at Stax. We never had any charts in Memphis.
No charts.
No, never did. We just had to learn it and memorize it. And it was extemporaneous that way. If someone would say, oh, hey, wait a minute, let's try play that instead of that, you know. It just came out of the top of our heads. And if it worked, if we used it. If we didn't, we threw it out and went on to the next thing.
A lot of the Motown guys said the same thing you did. They would go out and play at night. Did going out and playing at night help you the way that it helped them by being able to go into the studio the next day and go, hey, let's do that thing we did last night, kind of a deal?
No, because I didn't work with the horn players.
Oh.
I worked in a different, Duck worked in the band with me, and Paul Ritchie, and we did have a saxophone player. We made up arrangements on the spot. We had several singers in the band, and Joe and I would make up horn arrangements to go behind these songs. And we had Robert Talley playing piano, and Robert was a great musician. And he helped me understand how to play around a singer and not hurt him, not step on him, and how to play a solo. He taught me to play solos. Aside from Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White, I won talent contests with in high school. And I did learn a great deal, and I think Duck probably learned more about the bass in that 2 years at Little Abner's Rebel Room in Memphis with Robert Talley than he ever learned anywhere else. And in the studio, of course, we learned all the time. Otis Redding was a natural horn arranger, a natural musician. He came to the studio with all the song in his head, everything. The guitar, the bass, the drums, and the horn parts, and the background vocals. And he was kind of a genius guy. And he had such a strong personality that we loved to be with him because he was Otis Redding. He walked into place and changed the temperature of the building. And Sam and Dave, of course, were really fun to work with. They weren't arrangers, but Steve Cropper, Isaac, and David wrote those songs, and and Isaac Hayes is a real genius at music, and he would always know kind of what the horn line, da 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 da, those kind of things that went with the music he had been writing for Sam and Dave. Quite an experience.
How does it feel to still hear those songs being so commercially used, not only on radio, but like the Blues Brothers and all that? Yeah,
Dan Aykroyd was at the Sportsman's here the other day with Isaac Tigert, and I was in there and we got talking, and I thanked him for saving our music through the disco era when rhythm and blues and all that was kind of tucked under the carpet, and here came the big long slick songs and everything. They went out on the road and kept us alive. And then when that went down, I'm going out with the band now and playing those songs. Because we invented something at Stax. We made music that hadn't been heard before. And actually, I don't think they've really invented something new yet. They may, but until they do, that great music from that era, the 60s and 70s, will live on. And I think I'm a part of some. I mean, I go to Sydney, Australia, and I hear Try a Little Tenderness in the elevator, and that's me. And it knocks me down. I just go, can't believe I came off a cotton patch in Arkansas and wind up somewhere exotic like Paris or Italy or Japan or wherever, and they want the Memphis Horns. They want us to play on the current record sessions, and they played those songs So it's really been a thrill to be involved in such a rich tapestry of music.
After Stax closed, what happened to the Memphis Horns? What did you do there?
Well, actually, Andrew and I left Stax in 1969 and formed the Memphis Horns. And truly, it was because Jim Stewart asked us not to go anywhere else and play on anyone else's records. He wanted to be exclusive. Well, Andrew and I were working for Atlantic Records in Miami and in New York. We were coming to Nashville and working for different producers and going to Jackson, Mississippi, L.A. and working for Warner Brothers. And we didn't want to be restricted. And we were at American Studios with Chips Moman, and we were just turning out hits every day. And over at Willie Mitchell's place with Al Green and Ann Peoples.
Did you play on the Elvis songs over at American?
Yeah.
Wow.
Played on all the Elvis things, In the Ghetto and Suspicious Minds and Kentucky Rain.
Suspicious Minds got to be maybe the overall, I mean, you know, other than the initial shock that Elvis had with those great 50s records, that has to be overall the best record to me he ever did.
You know, I'll tell you a quick story about that. We were working at American, and we worked over there a lot. We were doing Neil Diamond, and we were real impressed with Neil. And we did Sweet Caroline, and Brother Love's Traveling Salvation Show, and the others that were cut right then, Hallie Holy or Holy Hallie, whatever that one was. And we were really in love with that stuff. I mean, it was just great to lay horns, and American Rhythm Section was one of the greatest of all times. Well, they said Elvis is coming. That was nice. We were glad Elvis was coming. You know, he was a friend and somebody from Memphis, and he was a movie star, and he was all this, the king of rock and roll, but he wasn't Neil Diamond. So, Mark James wrote a song called, we did Hooked on a Feeling too, but he did Suspicious Minds. When I heard Suspicious Minds, the track, and Elvis was singing it right there, just in a booth like that, right there, I got crazy. And then when he did it in the ghetto, and we were in the ghetto, and it was late at night, and there was a guy with a gun on the roof, because Martin Luther King had just gotten killed, and we were in the ghetto. All the studios in Memphis were in the ghetto because it's cheap. I knew that Elvis was coming back into a career bigger and better than he had ever had before, and I was going to be a part of it. I was just killed, knocked out.
Did you play any of the big festivals? Monterey or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. We went, Andrew and I, and Joe Arnold, he was the saxophone player that worked with us at the time, and he was working with me at Little Abner's also. Floyd Newman couldn't go because he was going to college, and he was going to take some tests. And we took Joe, and he and I and Andrew were the horn section for the Stax Boat Review of 1967. We went through Europe for a month. We did 29 cities in 31 days. And then when we came home, the next thing we did was go to Atlanta and did the NARM convention there with Otis and the same crew, same singers. And after that, we went and did the Monterey Pop Festival. And after that, Otis was killed. And we did Horns on Dock of the Bay the day before he was killed. Andrew and I were supposed to go on that trip and augment his road band. The Barcade, actually, we were going to augment the Barcade's horn section in a live album. And the plane went down and killed all of them except the trumpet player, Ben Cawley. He lived through it. But Andrew and I were supposed to go. We stayed home and put horns on Dock of the Bay. And that kept us from being on that plane.
Is there a period so far in your career that you look back on with the fondest memories, or is it all just great, you know? Or
I've had a great time, except for a period of time after Marty Robbins died. I had 2 or 3 years where nothing would happen for me. You know how the music business can be. You can be on cloud 9 one day and the next day on the floor. And I just got really out of work, and I was sad because the music business had swung away from me, I thought. Then one day Peter Gabriel's called me and asked me to come to New York City and do the horns on his new record. And I went up there and we did Sledgehammer, and I used the Uptown horns. So I walked from out of the closet into the sunshine, bang, one day, one day from the dumps to Peter Gabriel's talking about me all over the world, saying I was the greatest, and the Memphis sound was the greatest, and he had me come go on tour with him some, and boy, next thing you know, I was back in the A column, people who needed me. Then I did Stevie Winwood, Andrew and I went to Toronto and did Roll With It.
That was huge record.
Huge record. And then the next thing you know, Jimmy Buffett wanted us to go on tour, and we did. So, I mean, we were rocking in high clover, and that went on for a long time. And then we went out with Robert Cray and did toured with him for years. And that was a great band. We loved Robert, and we loved making his records. And then by then we'd drop back to two, just me and Andrew, and with the new technology. And also that was Jimmy Buffett too. We'd do 2 tracks, a tenor and trumpet, and then I would play trombone over that. So we'd have 5 horns with a trombone in the kind of like peanut butter in the middle of all those other horns, and it sounded great.
Do you look back at the Stax era, because I mean all that stuff you're talking about, it's all top drawer. Anybody would be glad to have part of that for their career. When you think about having it all, it's just unbelievable, really.
And you know what you hear when you hear that music? You hear youth, and you hear enthusiasm, and you hear inventiveness, because we didn't know anything. We were inventing something to play. Otis was inventing things in his head. Steve Cropper was inventing songs with Wilson Pickett. I mean, and it was a joy. It was joy you hear that can only come out of youth and ignorance. And all of a sudden the lights turned on me. I'm in the same room with Wilson Pickett, and then I'm going to the club tonight and play this stuff, and we're going to thrill 300 people that's in this club tonight. I mean, we went 7 days a week and 7 nights a week, and Thanksgiving, and we might get Christmas Eve off. I mean, that's how intense it was for 10 years in Memphis. And then we'd go over to High Records and do Al Green. We had 18 #1 records in a row with Al. In a row. I mean, that's the kind of thing it was in the 60s and the 70s, and I tried to capture that in my book. The name of the book is In My Wildest Dreams, because as a kid in West Memphis, going to band clinics and and I was real flash, and I played pretty, and played in Carnival of Venice by Dale Staggers, and I was great at that stuff. But I never dreamed, or could I dream, that there would be a career for me in my life with my trumpet, and I would never have to do anything but that, and I would go where it took me, and I would be broke when it wasn't being used, and I'd be rich when it was, when it was in vogue. And so that's exactly what my life has been. It's been beyond my wildest dreams.